Greetings, I'm John Carl. Welcome to the Retirement Spectrum, where we get the opportunity to chat with the thought leaders and some of the major practitioners in our wonderful retirement industry that are at the forefront of thought leadership, covering the spectrum of all things retirement, which of course is extremely important in our industry. Today, we have the pleasure and privilege of talking to actually a friend of mine, Connor Thomas. Connor is the Vice President of Business Development for CapitalROCK. Connor, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, a beautiful day today in the neighborhood. I don't know if you're enjoying cold weather or down in lovely Richmond, Virginia, or what your climate is down there.
We are. It's actually going to be, I think, one of the colder days of the year. We're just hovering around freezing today, even for the high.
Well, as they say in the South, Connor, bless your heart.
That's right.
There you go. So, Connor, before we get into this, as we always like to do on the spectrum, is you're a thought leader in our industry. You're delivering tremendous solutions on the software side of things to all the big banks, broker-dealers, independents, wirehouses, RIAs. I mean, you're a major contributor in the spectrum of retirement to the compliance side of things, which, of course, in ERISA land, compliance is king.
Right.
So why don't you give us before we get into it, though, Connor, I want to hear a little bit about your background. How did you become, what did you do? What was your pathway to become the Vice President of Business Development for a major software compliance vendor in our industry?
Yeah, it's a story. I don't know that it's that exciting, but I grew up in Texas, went to school in Virginia, and happened to kind of land at an interesting place as a financial planning software company out of Virginia that was out there for 6 or 7 years, saw it grow from a real small company to a really big one, and then went to a couple of different fintechs along the way, ended up kind of at CapitalROCK back in 2015 or 16. And it was a smaller company then. We had a little bit of a different focus. We had come out of the compliance space to do some sales analytics, which we still do today, but it happened to be a little bit at the intersection at the right place at the right time when it comes to really it was the last DOL rule, and then just kind of iteratively have grown since that time. And now we've got quite a lengthy client list of what I would say are more compliance clients now than when we started. So in terms of sales analytics, so it's definitely the key part of our business. And I've been here as we've kind of made that transition from kind of ancillary compliance technology to, I think, one of the leaders on the front side of a transaction.
Well, right on the money, Connor. I, of course, know CapitalROCK, but maybe some of our viewers would like a little bit more history. How long has CapitalROCK been around? Your primary tool, I believe, is the RightBRIDGE system solution. But
Yep.
How long has CapitalROCK been around? How big are you? And then we'll get into the RightBRIDGE solution systems that you bring to the table.
Sure. So CapitalROCK's been around since 2007, which is just an interesting time to launch any type of company. So right in the thick of things. And I'd say we're kind of an interesting company in that most fintechs start selling individual licenses, and they get to maybe some smaller firms and then maybe some smaller enterprises. And we're a company that really started with some industry execs that have been around the block and making fintech now for close to 30 years. And we started with some really big insurance companies as our first handful of clients that were on the sales analytics side. We still have those clients today. And about 2011 is when we had, I think, a pretty significant breakthrough with the RightBRIDGE product line. We created something called the Annuity Wizard, which is certainly our most popular tool in terms of number of clients. There's about 50 broker dealers that use that tool. And it allowed, at the time, it was more sales focused. It allowed financial professionals to look across their entire book of business in terms of what was available to them. Their product shelf would probably be a better word to describe that, and find the right suite of products to really help out and give them a short list of products that made a lot of sense to evaluate. So that, I think, was a helpful tool. And then as regulations started stacking up with the old DOL rule, with insurance, state level insurance rules like Reg 187, it became more of a compliance tool. And today, I think we've got a pretty good split between those that use us primarily as a sales tool and those that use us primarily as a front-end compliance best interest check. And a fair number that uses for both. It kind of kills two birds with one stone.
Well, Connor, I'll pay you your $20 for leading me right into where I wanted to go with you on this. Is, obviously your clients are the compliance departments of the organizations. And you started with this annuity wizard, which is very popular. But you bring up a good point, because I think it's a big differentiator for what you do at CapitalROCK with the RightBRIDGE system. Is, you're trying to also bring a enterprise solution to not just the compliance side, but also help grow their business in the space that you're delivering these solutions to the advisor desktop. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was just kind of a natural fit for us. I had mentioned that some of the guys that founded CapitalROCK had come out of the compliance space. They had a pretty deep background in post-trade review systems. And when they founded CapitalROCK, they said, hey, with all the data that we can now collect, this is, in the early aughts, I guess you could call it. They said there sure is a lot of data that we're using it for compliance purposes, but you could use it for some really cool sales analytics stuff. And so that was really what they started out to do. And then they realized as time went on that much of the data that we're capturing that was a job aid, that was something that a rep would want to use, could be used also for compliance purposes. And so that, I think, puts us in a kind of an interesting spot where there's systems out there that are compliance driven and that's all they're focused on. And there's tools out there that are sales tools that help you select a product or at least give you a marketplace to kind of look around. I think we're in the unique spot in that compliance typically drives or supervision the decision to license RightBRIDGE. There are some sales aspects where a sales manager might do the same thing, but in a lot of cases, when it comes to regulation, of course, it's compliance and supervision. And I think they get a lot of kind of warm fuzzies thinking about, well, if I have to mandate that a tool becomes used, I'd rather require that the tool be something that a rep would ordinarily want to use. And we've got a laundry list of folks that maybe they were the annuity person or the investment person, and they said, geez, I've been wanting to get the investment wizard or the annuity wizard forever. I just haven't had budget. And now all of a sudden we have a regulation that comes down the line and they say, this is a way for us to be able to get what we've been wanting for sales purposes. And we can also check the box that the broker dealer is looking to check in terms of having a good process for compliance purposes.
Yeah, you and I talk about this a lot. Who knew that a compliance tool could have some practice management applications?
Right.
And you bring up the regulatory environment, Connor. So being the retirement spectrum, we love the annuity wizard. Not that we can't have another one on that, but let's talk about the hot dot in rollovers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you started addressing Reg BI, or maybe you started with the Obama administration, going after the rollover space. Tell us how, the Obama administration, Reg BI, and now PTE 2020-02 with the impending June deadline here. Tell us a little bit about this rollover wizard program and, what folks are looking to solve for and what you're bringing to the table there.
Yeah, it was, I'll tell you a little bit of the story on that one as well. So we had a healthy number of annuity wizard clients at the time of the last Obama era DOL rule. And many of them said, you know what, we feel great about being able to justify which annuity that we're selling. We can say I sold annuity A over B, C, and D because of X, Y, and Z. And one of the things that we do really well is we document the sale. We have something called reason text, which is automatically generated client and recommendation specific reasons why. More on that in a second when we talk about the current iteration of the rule. But essentially, these clients said, we're really buttoned up with the annuity wizard on product. However, we need something that's going to help us in two areas. Number one, if you sold an annuity, and remember, we're thinking annuity wizard back then, so that's the example. We support all product types now, but that was kind of what we were focused on 5 or 6 years ago. Why did I sell an annuity when I had other product types available? In other words, if there was a low-cost mutual fund option, why did you sell an annuity? Well, that's a step further beyond or behind the annuity wizard. And it's actually something that we had done before. So we kind of dusted off an old concept, put a new skin on it, and put a lot of newer, smarter technology than the last iteration of it. And we created something called the product profiler. And that would validate a destination category. So what are you rolling over to? It could validate why you went annuity over mutual fund account, or why you went advisory over brokerage, or a number of things. It's big categorical justification. The other thing that it did was validate whether or not the rollover met the firm's criteria for a best interest rollover. And so we did do that back in the Obama era DOL rule. We did quite a bit of work on it in anticipation of Reg BI. And that was just because Reg BI had a couple of more specific characteristics that we wanted to be able to document. And that's when we really got into, I'd say, some of our more highbrow functions when it comes to rollover analysis. And so we were very well positioned as this new rule or exemption came online 2020-02. And so what we did is we kind of took stock of what the exemption said, what our system did. There was a little bit of a delta we had to close the gap on. For example, previously none of our clients had a lot of regulatory requirements around IRA to IRA transfers, especially if it was something that they already managed it. They were just moving it from brokerage to advisory. They had no process around that. So we beefed up that part of the tool, and we worked in partnership with the Wagner Law Group and had them evaluate our solution, provide an opinion that supports RightBRIDGE for 2020-02. And it's really just been kind of a fast-paced process ever since. Lots and lots of the big firms that had been kind of evaluating us over the years found that, you know, the time's right. They feel that they need to be prepared this time, better prepared than previous regulations or rules. And we've kind of found ourselves again at that intersection of the right place at the right time, particularly with reason text. One of the big changes for 2020-02 is you have to document the reasons why the sale is in the client's best interest. And that's RightBRIDGE 101. That's something that our reason text does. It documents a sale. It says, the client said this, the recommendation is that, therefore, and it creates a page to a page and a half of client specific and recommendation specific notes that explain the outcome. So it's really been, I think, a culmination of years of working in the rollover space and just kind of having that right solution at the right time.
Right, Connor. And there's nothing like, you know, as you pointed out earlier, some regulations to inspire, if you will, some of the clients to get off the dime here. And I know you've had a pretty good run here with your rollover wizard. But I want to kind of break it down into two things. You know, we do a lot of work, you know, publishing, you know, content, articles, training in the marketplace. When I look at PTE 2020-02, which of course firms have to be ready for this in June, would you agree we're not going to see any further delays, you know, than we have here? We're ready player one kind of. This is it. Time to go.
I think so. I haven't heard any real rumblings. I think before there was the delay, there was a crowd that said, "Hey, you know, we've got ears in Washington. We think there's going to be a little bit of a delay." I don't hear that now. I have not come across anybody who really feels otherwise. So I think there's kind of two, I guess you could call them, personas out there in the industry when it comes to firms and their decision making. There's those that are going to be ready and those that know that they should be, but for whatever reason there's something procedural or something where they're going to have maybe a non-sexy day one solution that is more paperwork intensive. But it seems that everybody is striving to say, we got to be ready. It's one way or another. It's either ideal or it's unideal for a short time, but we're going to be ready.
Right. Yeah, we got that delay that was supposed to kick in at the end of 2021. So I think I agree with you. We're there. But really, Connor, when I look at the enforcement, really, this is the enforcement time of PTE 2020-02. I look at it as there's really two components, right? You know, number one is, you know, managing and documenting the standard of care, which is know thy client, know the client's environment that they're in plan, and then contrast that over to an IRA environment, which theoretically should be an enhanced environment.
Right.
You know, so that would be step one. And then step two would, of course, be, you know, in-plan environment, even if the IRA environment is enhanced, probably going to be more expensive over the IRA. So am I right or wrong? Or those are the two variables? And how do you go about solving for that with the right?
I think it's certainly a situation where, you know, there's going to be more features in an IRA in general, and there's going to be a higher cost. And so if it really was about just fee for fee, I think the bottom line is almost nobody would be doing rollovers. If it was always the fee piece of the puzzle that drove the decision, we wouldn't just do many rollovers. And so really what firms tend to focus on is, what is the level of service that you're getting right now from a financial advisor or consultant of some type? What are your investment options? And then as a consumer, as an investor, what is it that you would be looking for? Ideally, what's the level of management that you're looking for? What's the level of outside help? Are there certain product types or categories of product altogether that you don't have access to in your 401k? And how do you map those things together and say, yes, fees are going to go up. You're coming from a subsidized account to a more fully featured account that's going to have a higher cost because it's not being subsidized and it has all these features. The justification for why that is really what our system can help with, because we're asking the right questions to say, what is it that you want? Are you getting it? And could you get it here? Just to summarize a bit.
Makes a lot of sense, Connor. And I think in particular, for the higher net worth individuals, it's not just asset allocation, it's financial planning across the household. And then you get into the concept of asset location, which, where should the assets be located, which account? Probably your ugliest taxable assets should be in your deferred accounts. And, that all comes into play there, justifying the higher cost for the rollovers. But I do want to, we just published an article that I think I shared with you about the hunt for the elusive 404A5. As you know, the DOL says, you should ask as an advisor, Mrs. Lubner, your client or your prospect, saying, hey, share with me your 404A5 so I can compare your in-plan fees to potentially the higher fees in the IRA and the environment thereof. But that's not so easy, Connor. Right? There's no database for 404A5. There's no standard reporting, even if there was one. What's your take on this hunt for the elusive 404A5? I know mine, but how are you solving for the fee conversation?
Yeah, I think we do it just the way that the Department of Labor says you should. So if you haven't checked out the FAQs that the Department of Labor released in April of 21, it's a short document, much shorter than the whole exemption, but they're pretty clear. And that's, you should make every effort to get that 404A5. I think that they recognize that can be a tall task. Oftentimes that document isn't called a 404A5. So if you call up your 401k provider and you happen to catch somebody and you ask them, hey, where do I get this? It can take a long time. And some clients, I think I'd probably paint myself that way if I was working with a professional for a rollover. It'd be, I really don't want to spend the time to do that. And so if your client's unwilling, you got to have some type of pathway to continue the analysis. And the department suggests that you can use the Form 5500, which the way I describe that is the individual document that you're looking for the client is specific to them. It is accurate for how they are allocated. And you can't beat that, but you can get pretty darn close. And the next step closer, if you could draw a concentric circle around really what that best is, which is the 404A5, it would be at least being accurate to the plan. And so if you can get plan documents, it's not perfect. The 5500 was never really intended to be used for this purpose, but it is. They've told you can use it. So it does give you some, I think, important plan information. Particularly, you can derive the admin fee. And you can have some window into how some of the investments, what those investments are. And then, of course, the level 3 is if you cannot find the 5500, then you can use a reliable benchmark. So we kind of follow those steps. We've been doing that now for a number of years for some pretty high profile firms that are always in the midst of some type of review, and we've never had any real feedback to do anything different. So it's great that they're guidance right now is in line with what we do, which is start with the 404A5, move on to the 5500. If you still can't find it, use a reliable benchmark. And I think we've done a couple things that make it above and beyond that. Number one is if you're using the investment wizard, you can actually type in their allocation and we'll tell you their weighted expense ratio, which is pretty cool. So if you've got the admin rate from the 5500 and you've got their expense ratio from how they're allocated, you're pretty darn close to what the 404A5 says you should be. And then on top of that, for subscribers that are licensed with RLC, they can get plan snapshots. And plan snapshots, I'll let you talk about those, but I think that goes way above and beyond what a 5500 can do, and even gives you, again, back to some of those opportunities for really business building criteria, things that, yeah, you've got to do this process now with 2020-02, but along the way, if you can get some business builder stuff in there, then that's a win-win.
Yeah, Connor, you nailed that. You have an exceptional partner on the data from the plan documents, the auditor report.
I agree.
Hundreds in RLC, where you upload our data, which is really a standard of care data to compare that robust plan environment before they do the rollover. But I do want to hit on this 404A5 again, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's two different 404A5s. There's a firm level 404A5, which I've read my own, at Retirement Learning Center. I don't know how helpful it is. It lists every possible fee there could be. But, if you and I were both at the RLC, you might be, you're aggressive, Connor. You might be in the active managed trade and funds and stuff like that. I'm, conservative. Maybe I'm in the stable value or the target date. So even though we're in the same plan and we have the 404A5 firm level, our fees are different. So really what I think what the DOL is looking for is that personal quarterly 404A5 that's unique to you. And dare I say, I've tried to find mine. Good luck finding it. With that. So I think that you're right on. And it was interesting that the DOL came immediately out and said, ask for the 40485, explain why it's so important. But if Mrs. Lubner, client prospect, can't find it, then move quickly on to the 5500 or an approximator. And that's a proprietary algorithm that you put together. Is that right, Connor?
Yeah, we've definitely done some work and some research into what we provide, especially the benchmarking feature. We've spent a lot of time and energy there, and that's over years. And so it's kind of changed over time as we've gotten more and more data that we can parse through, and the regulators have given us some idea from time to time through their guidance. So it's I think a pretty impressive piece. It's been in production for a very long time, and even just with the 5500 data, sure, you can, if you're a practitioner out there, you can go and you can access the 5500 data, but it's not really in a usable format. You've got to run some calculations. You've got to have your map key to figure out what the codes are. So we've just tried to make that as simple as possible and say, search for the company and we'll return the data in the usable format. And on top of putting it in the usable format, I've skipped over something that I think is really important. It's the department's website where you're searching 5500. I think the search criteria leaves a little bit to be desired. It works. But sometimes you have to do a little work to find just the company that you're looking for. And we've really optimized our search so you don't have to mess with that much.
Yeah, right on the money. I've looked even, again, I've looked at our own 5500. It says it has an erroneous number of employees there. We actually, sent amendments in on that. But anyway, Connor, I think you're at the forefront and have been, for some time on the compliance side of the equation. What I love about what you're doing here is that confluence of compliance and practice management. Would you say that folks who are adopting, CapitalROCK are looking at it in that fashion? They're checking the box, and certainly, in a mandatory required way now with PTE 2020-02 enforcement coming in June. So they're taking care of their compliance side of the house. But, if I'm not mistaken, I think folks that are integrating the full CapitalROCK experience and dare I say, using the RLC data and your fee analysis, I think firms that I've talked to think they can actually now clearly do scalable and grow their rollover business for the first time that I can recall in some time in our industry.
I think so. I think the structure, and one thing we haven't talked about on this call is that RightBRIDGE allows the broker dealer, the home office to do some configuration work with our team so that it's their process in our system. So what we're providing is the mechanism to systematize that process. And oftentimes, yeah, a big piece of their process is not just you must dot A, B, and C here, but here's the opportunity. If you can follow our process, it's going to naturally lend you to not only do business more compliantly, but find some opportunities that you might otherwise not have found. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely a feature of the tool, is being able to scale it up and be able to say, yep, we can start with a minimum viable product. And as that goes out there, we can then turn this into a huge value add for the producer out there. And instead of saying you must use a compliance tool, it's you got to use something for compliance. And we went out and we got you the best. And this tool is not only going to make sure that you have a smooth process through compliance and that you're following firm procedures, but it's also going to give you a window into data that you might otherwise not be able to find. So I think it's a big value proposition for us, is saying, yeah, you've got to do something for compliance, but if you can do something that works for compliance and builds the business, then that's definitely a win-win.
Yeah, you're nailing it, Connor. And that's my final point for you. And congratulations on the great success here and the solution, the thought leadership solution that you're providing to our industry here. But what role does training have, in this? I've always been the kind of person where, having been a financial advisor, worked with financial advisors, throughout the years, when you put, a technology thing on their desktop and just, assume that they can go out and adopt it, let alone turn it into something, that can really be scalable and valuable to their practice. What role do you see training might have in this, in the rollover wizard and the solutions you're providing?
Well, I'd break it into two pieces. I think there's solution training on how do you use a system like RightBRIDGE, and we tend to work with the home office. They tend to have a process that they follow for training, and rather than trying to say, hey, RightBRIDGE is going to show up and we'll tell you how to use the system, we can, but a lot of the training around our tool centers around your firm's procedures. And so when we have questions about, well, what do I do with a RightBRIDGE report and how do I get there? Those are questions that RightBRIDGE really, we can tell you what happens inside of the RightBRIDGE four walls, but outside of that, that's really where we leverage the teams at the broker-dealers' home offices. And I think one of the things that we're really excited about is being able to say, firms are always looking for training. What are some good resources? And through partnership with RLC, being able to say, hey, we know some folks that are really, really good at ERISA training. And oh, by the way, they happen to be experts in knowing the RightBRIDGE system. So not only can they help you with the training aspect of being able to help folks, to borrow a phrase, navigate the new rollover reality, they're familiar with the platform that you're using. And they can tell you, this is where you can pull the snapshots, and this is what you can do with that data. So for us, it's been great to be able to point to somebody and say, if you're looking for training, this is who you ought to talk to, because we're experts only in the small bit of our tool that we can help from a training perspective. And we recognize that we are a puzzle piece. I think it's an important one, but in a bigger picture of all the things you have to do to be compliant with 2020-02.
Well, fantastic, Connor. I can't thank you enough for giving us some of your valuable time today to jump on the retirement spectrum and talk about the all-important rollover wizard and the changes we're seeing regulatorily in the rollover marketplace, and that it doesn't just have to be a compliance solution, that it can be a business building solution. And you've been providing compliance and practice management solutions for some time at CapitalROCK. So congratulations on the RightBRIDGE system. For those of you who are looking to get in touch with CapitalROCK, Connor, do you want to give them some information on how to reach out to you?
Sure. We've got CapitalROCK.com is probably the easiest thing to memorize if you're listening on your commute or something like that. But you can always call us at 804-495-3644. That'll get you right to us. And then CapitalROCK.com if there's too many numbers to memorize while you're listening to your podcast. But yeah, John, thank you for having me and for featuring us. And we're really, really excited to see where this podcast goes.
Pleasure and privilege, Connor. You're our first and major vendor guest at a minimum here. And again, viewers, I hope you enjoyed today's segment of the Retirement Spectrum. Tune in next time for another one of our tantalizing Retirement Spectrum podcasts, hearing from our thought leaders across the spectrum in our retirement industry and the practitioners that are bringing it to life. John Carl signing off.